They say Easter is a celebration of resurrection, of rebirth. But no one tells you what happens when something comes back that shouldn't. Some things are meant to stay buried. This is the story of the Whitlock family, and how a quaint Easter tradition awakened something ancient. Spring had just crept into the sleepy town of Elderbrook. The snow was melting into the gutters, and children painted eggs under pastel banners that fluttered outside every storefront. But nestled at the edge of town, shrouded by dark pine woods, stood the Whitlock Estate crumbling mansion with boarded-up windows and a long-forgotten chapel in its backyard. Thomas Whitlock had recently inherited the home after the mysterious death of his grandfather, Reverend Abel Whitlock. The old man had lived reclusively, preaching to no one, holding midnight services in the empty chapel for years. When he was found dead on Easter morning, kneeling before a blood-stained altar, the town quietly moved on. Thomas didn't. In fact, he was fascinated by the inheritance. A struggling author and skeptic, he moved into the estate with his wife Clara and their 6-year-old daughter Lucy, hoping the eerie mansion would inspire a new horror novel. It did, but not in the way he hoped. Their first Easter in the house arrived with a cold fog that never lifted. The skies were wrong that week, always gray, always still, as though something above was holding its breath. Lucy found the first egg on Maundy Thursday. She brought it into the kitchen, smiling. "Look what I found buried in the garden." It wasn't one of their eggs. It was carved from bone, pale, smooth, and sealed with wax. Thomas opened it, expecting a trinket. Instead, a whisper leaked from inside. No one else heard it. Not then. But Lucy flinched. "Daddy," she said, her eyes suddenly glassy. "The man inside says he's almost done sleeping." The next day, Thomas explored the chapel. It was just as the police had described. Dust, old pews, a shattered crucifix that hung upside down. But in the floor, beneath the altar, was a trapdoor sealed with dozens of rusted nails. Burned into the wood was a sigil he didn't recognize. A circle made of thorns. 7 eyes. 1 mouth. His wife told him not to open it. So he didn't. Not yet. That night, Lucy began sleepwalking. She would stand in front of the fireplace and mutter in her sleep. Strange words. Latin, maybe? And always ending with, "He is risen." Claire wanted to call a doctor. Thomas wanted to write it all down. But then Lucy's drawings changed. No more bunny rabbits. No pastel colors. She began to draw the chapel. Again and again. Each time, it became more detailed. By Easter morning, her final drawing showed the trapdoor opened with black arms reaching out from below. In the margins, she had written in jagged, looping letters, "The hollow man is hungry." April 9th, Easter Sunday. The Whitlocks sat down for breakfast. Clara tried to lighten the mood by placing a chocolate bunny on everyone's plate. Lucy didn't touch hers. Instead, she whispered, "He wants us in the chapel now." When they refused, the walls of the house began to bleed. Dark, oozing streaks of crimson leaked from every corner. From light sockets. From the floorboards. The air turned metallic. Bitter. And in the static-laced silence, the door to the backyard slowly creaked open. On instinct or madness, they followed Lucy into the fog, toward the chapel. Inside, the air was heavier than outside, and colder. Despite no wind, candles had been lit by unseen hands. The altar was drenched in dried blood, and the trapdoor once sealed tight with rusted nails was now ajar. Lucy walked forward without hesitation, Clara screamed. Thomas stood frozen. From the trapdoor, something began to sing. A hymn. Familiar, yet twisted. It sounded like 1,000 voices in unison, some crying, some laughing, some choking. And then the ground split. They say the mouth of hell is a metaphor. I assure you, it is not. Below the chapel was a spiraling pit, lined with rotted pews and bones arranged in grotesque shapes. At the bottom, a pulsing, egg-shaped cocoon made of stitched flesh. Lucy was already halfway down the spiral before Clara chased her. Thomas, finally jolted by terror, followed. As they descended, the whispers grew louder, chanting, "He has waited. He has hungered. He is risen." The cocoon burst open like overripe fruit, and what emerged was not human. Not entirely. It was tall, featureless, like a man carved from ash and shadow. Its face was a hollow cavitia mouth that opened too wide, never blinking. It didn't speak. It breathed. And in that breath were every nightmare ever dreamed. Lucy stepped forward and embraced it. Clara collapsed, weeping. Thomas reached for his daughter, but the creature raised a hand. He froze mid-step, bones locked in place. And then it spoke. To Thomas, and to him alone. Your blood opened the gate. Your name is the key. You are the last Whitlock. He remembered something. His grandfather, Reverend Abel, had once tried to tell him that their family were guardians, not of holiness, but of containment. The chapel had never been a place of worship. It was a prison for the hollow man, a being older than sin, older than language, something born of fear and worship, fed by ritual and death. And now, it had a child, a vessel, Lucy, unless the bloodline was severed, unless Thomas did the unthinkable. Clara screamed for him to run, but Thomas made his choice. He stepped forward and whispered into the creature's mouth, "Take May. Leave her." The hollow man paused, then nodded, and began to consume. Not eating. Not biting. But absorbing. Thomas felt every memory stripped, every regret peeled. His body dissolved, piece by piece, into the creature's form. And then it collapsed, back into the cocoon. Seal. Silent. Lucy fainted. Clara carried her out of the chapel. As dawn broke, the fog lifted. The house was no longer bleeding. The grass outside had turned green. But the chapel door remained shut. And beneath it, something slept again. 1 year later. Lucy doesn't remember Easter. But sometimes, when Clara walks past the chapel, she hears humming. The child's voice. And another, deeper voice, harmonizing. A lullaby sung to something waiting to be born again. The hollow man sleeps. But not forever, because Easter always comes again. They always say Easter is a time for new beginnings, for joy, for pastel colors and laughter in the spring air. But the town of Elmridge remembers Easter a little differently. And if you ever find yourself there in April, don't pick up the eggs. Not unless you want to hear them whisper. My name is Sarah. I was 13 when it happened. And every Easter since, I still hear the rustle of something moving under the grass. This is the story of the year Elmridge canceled Easter. It began like any other spring morning. Church bells rang, children put on their Sunday best, and the town square was buzzing with excitement. The Elmridge Easter egg hunt was the highlight of the season, and It was always held in the old MC Allister field, a grassy stretch that bordered the woods. That year, a new batch of eggs appeared. Glossy, marbled, heavier than normal. No one knew who brought them. They were just there, scattered around the field like giant jewels. Some people assumed the town council had upgraded the decorations, but they hadn't. I remember bending to pick one up. It was smooth and cold, like polished stone. It didn't feel right. And when I held it to my ear, Don't asked me why I heard something. Not a sound exactly. More like breathing. My best friend Lily laughed it off. She opened hers. Inside was a tiny carved rabbit made of bone. She joked it was probably from some overpriced artisan, but I saw her hand tremble. As more kids cracked open the eggs, the fun started to twist. A boy named Jeremy found a small human tooth in his. Another girl discovered a dried eyeball, perfectly preserved like it had been staring for decades. The laughter stopped. Parents began collecting their children, and the mayor announced the hunt was over. But by then, the field had changed. The air had gone thick. The sky, though cloudless, dimmed slightly as if something massive had passed between the sun and us, just for a moment. People tried to leave, but the road back was gone. Not blocked. Not broken. Just missing. The trees had moved. The path out of the field led only deeper into the forest, where none of us remembered trees growing before. Panic set in. Phones didn't work. The mayor tried to calm everyone, said we should camp overnight and wait for help. Tents were pitched, fires lit, but no one slept. That night, we heard it. Soft thumping, like something hopping, but heavy. Wet. Then came the giggles. Not the sweet kind. These were high-pitched, broken, like children pretending to be happy while their faces twisted in pain. Shapes danced just outside the firelight, tall, lanky figures with long ears and eyes that shone like wet stones. One by one, the children began to disappear. At first, we thought they were wandering off, but we found the remains. A bonnet here. A stuffed rabbit, soaked in red, there. The bones came later. Lily vanished on the second night. I saw her just before she went. She stood at the edge of camp, holding one of the hollow eggs. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling. Then she turned and walked into the woods. I followed. The trees were thicker than they should have been, and they moved. Not swayed. Moved. The deeper I went, the more eggs I found. Hundreds. Thousands. Nestled in the grass, perched on branches, hanging from the trees like grotesque ornaments. Some were cracked. Some bled. I found Lily standing before a massive shape. It looked like a rabbit, but it wasn't. It stood 9 feet tall, fur patchy and gray like grave mold. Its teeth were too long. Its eyes were human, not rabbit-like. Human. And it whispered her name. I tried to scream, but no sound came. The creature turned to me and said, in a voice like rust and worms, "Spring demands a sacrifice." The world blurred. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was back in the field, alone. No tents, no people, just broken eggshells and silence. The town never found the others. Officials claim mass hysteria, a gas leak, a freak forest fire. But I know the truth. I know what hops in the woods when the equinox cracks open the veil. The thing in the egg waits. It wants joy. It wants laughter. And when it gets it, it feeds on children, on memories, on spring itself. Every year since, I find one egg outside my window, cracked, breathing. And I know one day it will come for me too, because spring remembers, and the hollow egg is never empty for long.